All right, we are on the bottom of Kuf Nun Gimel and going into Kuf Nun Dalit. We're talking about the halachot of leading a donkey, that's carrying something for you on Shabbat. And you can lead a donkey by pulling it with a string or by speaking to it and calling it. This is actually surprisingly relevant halacha, because nowadays more and more we are speaking to devices. So, if you speak to your Alexa and tell it to call someone or tell it to raise the temperature, right, is speaking a command the same or more indirect or less indirect than actually doing something. So this could come up, a practical question if you need to call a doctor on Shabbat for whatever reason, and you can dial, or you can tell Google to call the number. Is it preferable to just say, so what precedent would we have in halacha for such a new concept of technology? Well, here it is, right? Giving commands to a chamor who's going to do the work for you. Is that considered that you're acting, or is it more indirect? And anyway, that is the essence of the question that we have before us. So we're going to see three different opinions about what is the level of obligation, if the level of chiyuv, if someone does lead the animal either through action or through speech. So the first opinion is here. Amar Rami bar Hama hamehamed achal behemto b'Shabbat b'shogeg chayav hatat b'mezid chayav hatat. Okay, if you're driving an animal that's carrying things for you, it's the same as any other melacha. If you do it by mistake, hatat. If you do it on purpose, with witnesses, sikila. Without witnesses, karet. My tama, Amar Rabbah. This says Rabbah here with an aleph, but the manuscript's correct to Rabbah with a he, which it has to be, because the next one is going to be Rabbah, who's going to be arguing on this. So this has to be. Rabbah says, proves it from a pasuk. You can't do malacha, you can't do it, and the animal can't do it. So the animal doing malacha is the same as you doing it. So same thing, whether you do it or the animal does it for you, you will be liable to the same punishment. All right, that's opinion number one. Amar Rava shetet yeshuvot badavar. He has two questions on this opinion. This is the Pisukim in Bemidbar, which are considered the source for all the other laws that have the same punishment. And this one is said to be about Avodah Zarah. So Avodah Zarah is like the paradigm for anything else that it would be Hayav Hatat. And so here, Huksha Kol HaTorah Kola Avodah Zarah, Ma Avodah Zarah. Take that line out of context, it sounds funny, that the whole Torah is compared to Avodah Zarah. It means that in terms of the punishment, all the other punishments of other things are compared to the punishment of the paradigm of Avodah Zarah. Avodah Zarah de'abid ma'aseh b'gufeh, hachanameh de'abid ma'aseh b'gufeh. Just like idolatry, in order to be liable, you actually have to do the action. You have to bow down to it. You have to do something. So too, anything else that you be hayav hatat has to be something that you do with your own body. And therefore, only if you, comparing it to melacha, only if you light the match, that you carry something yourself, then okay, yes, but not if it's not if the animal's doing it. That's not the same as idolatry. So therefore, that's one reason why Rava says you should not receive the same punishment for an animal carrying something for you. And second reason why he disagrees, Rava disagrees with Rabbah. This is a Mishnah in Masechet Sanhedrin, which lists all the different punishments and what they apply to. And there it says, one who violates Shabbat in a matter in which you would have to give a hatat and sekila. So in other words, that implies that there are some matters, most, in which that is the punishment, but there are some that are not, right? It's not Mechala Shabbat, not always is it hatat and sekila. So mikla deika midi de'en chayvin al shigato hatat velo zedno sekila. So it must be things that are not included in the normal punishment. So what is it? It doesn't say. Let's guess. Maynihu lav dimhamer. So shouldn't it be mehamer, making your animal carry something? So there you go. Rava has two proofs that mehamer, you're not doing it with your own body. Something has to be excluded. There should be something excluded. So it shouldn't receive hatat and sekila punishment. Now, we reject the second part of it because there's other possibilities. Lo techomin v'adibad Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva thought that tehum Shabbat, that you can't go 2,000 amot outside your city, he considered that deoraita. Most other rabbis said it's derabanan. However, even Rabbi Akiva, who said it's deoraita, doesn't think that you have to give a hatat or sekila if you do violate it. So you see, according to Rabbi Akiva, that's one example that could fit into this Mishnah, an exception to the rule. So mehamer doesn't have to be that exception; it could be something else. Also, habara alibad Rabbi Yosef. I said now the example of if you light a match, but actually that's not an example according to everybody. According to Rabbi Yosef, lighting a match, although it's prohibited, and even one of the 39 malachot does not receive the same punishment as everything else. The Torah goes out of its way to say that you can't do that one. Why does it go out of its way to say that? Must be something special about it, and Rabbi Yosef says that it doesn't require the same punishment as the others. Okay, so that's all this discussion number one. And now we have discussion number two, which is also Rami Bar Hama, but a different version of what he taught. And this one is by Rav Zavid Matni Hachi, Amar Rami Bar Hama, Amechamer Achar Behemto Achar Behema B'Shabbat B'Shogeg, Eno Hayav Hatat. Here's the difference, Eno. He thinks that if I do lead my animal that's laden on Shabbat, if I do it by mistake, I don't have to bring a hatat, right? Driving an animal is less severe in terms of that. However, if I do it on purpose, that stays also sekila. Okay, so that's the second halacha. And in this version, Rava is still going to disagree. Metiv Rava mechalel et Shabbat b'davar shechayabin al shigato hatat. Bechayabin al zedono sekila. Right, we know the general rule says in the Braita that one who violates Shabbat regarding a matter where if you do it by mistake, you have to bring chatat. If you do it on purpose, you have to bring sekila. And he's going to make an inference. Therefore, if you don't have to bring a sacrifice for doing it by mistake, and you should not have to get sekila, stoning, if you do it on purpose. In other words, Rava states they go together. Either it's a pair, hatat and sekila, right? Or no hatat and no sekila. And so therefore he's disagreeing with this version here, which says you wouldn't have to bring a sacrifice for doing it by mistake, but you would get sekila. Where do we ever find such a thing? This goes against this beraita, which links the two. However, we reject this statement of Rava, mikataneha en hayavin hachikama. It doesn't say, actually it only said it in the positive, right? This is, going back to math 9, right? The logical rules, right? You say A, therefore B. That doesn't mean that not A, therefore not B, right? So just because it says anyone who would get hatat has to bring sekila, but still could be that this person doesn't get hatat, but still has to give sekila. It only said in the positive, not the negative. So hachikama davar shechayven zedono hatat, chayven zedono sekila. Veyesh davar she'en chayven shigato hatat. But there is an exception, and there is something that you don't bring a hatat, but still, nevertheless, chayavin al zedono sekila. Maynihu mehamer. And so what is that thing? That is the exception. That is driving a donkey. Okay. So that is the second version, the second law, right? So the first law says it would be the same as every other. Driving a donkey would be the same punishment as everything else. Rava disagrees and says it shouldn't be. And the second one says, no, by mistake, it shouldn't be chatat, but for everything else, it would be the same. And now the next version is going to be that driving a donkey should be patur. Now, before we get to who says this, we have a little bit of a story about the tradent who told us this. this teaching. Rava Ahu de Rav Mari bar Rachel. So that's already interesting. We have a sage called Rav Mari, the son of Rachel. This is a bit unusual. It happens in a few cases where a sage is named after his mother and not his father. So why is the sage who Rava, the brother of, we're talking about Rava who's the brother, Rav Mari, why is Rav Mari named after his mother? Well, the story goes, not all here, that this Rachel was the daughter of Shemuel, and she was once taken captive, and she became pregnant by this non-Jewish captor, and they had this child, Rav Mari. That captor, whose name was Isad, later converted to Judaism. But even after converting, it's still his biological father, but still not the legal father, because when someone converts, they become like a new person and not related to the same people they were beforehand. And so that's why she's named that's why she's called by her mother. Okay. Some say that this tradition was taught not by Rav's brother, but rather by Rav's father. Okay, now this confusion here. If you say it, the father of Rav Mari said this. We have another story that one time Rav said that Rav Mari, the daughter of Rachel, can be an official in Bavel. All right, an official, a clerk, per se, a Greek word. Okay, now in general, it's halakha that someone who converted cannot hold an official position. We learn this from a king that says you have to choose a king from within your brethren. And so a person cannot have authority within the Jewish community, like a judge, if they are a convert. And so if the person who he's talking about was a convert, then why would he have to say that it's okay? And so this is confusing according to the second one. If you say it's the father of Rabbi Barachel, if it's the father, and then that father is Jewish, because there's nothing wrong with him, why do you have to say it? So it must be Dilma Tere Mari Barachel Habu. Must be there's two different Rami Barachels. One of them is not a convert. That's what this was talking about. This father, and that's why. One of them is not a convert. That's this one, Avu, and one of them is a convert, and that's why in that case Rav had to say that he's still okay for this particular position, despite the fact that he's a convert. So anyway, the names are a little confusing. There must have been two. One was a convert. One of Mari, his father was a convert. There was another Rav Mari whose father was not a convert. Okay. In any case, whoever said this, here's back to the content. Hava matne la lehashma'at mishemet Rabbi Yochanan liftor. Amar Rabbi Yochanan mechamer achar be'emto b'Shabbat patur mikilum. So they had a halachic tradition that said, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, that said someone who drives an animal on Shabbat is exempt completely. There is no punishment for that. If you do by mistake, the whole Torah is like Avodah Zarah. Just like Avodah Zarah, you have to do an action yourself in order to be chayav. So too, here, I'm not carrying myself. The animal's carrying for me. And so therefore, there would be no hatat offering for doing a mistake. Well, we saw in the Mishnah that says someone who violates Shabbat in a matter that you have to bring a chatat, then you have sekila on purpose. And so, although we rejected this logic before, now we are using it. That there's a link between chatat and sekila. If there's no chatat, then there's no sekila either. And it's not even the lav. Belav namila mechayev. Usually a lav, if it just says don't do something, it doesn't give a punishment, we assume that the punishment would be lashes. And here, not even lashes would apply. Since it's a law where within that category of law it does go to Bet Din as a capital punishment. In general, laws of Shabbat do, and it's repeated as a warning, and another pasuk that says that you get capital punishment. So, although this particular one, for whatever reason, as we saw before, the technical reason, this doesn't get capital punishment since it is part of a more general category where that does get capital punishment, but we don't apply lashes also in that case. It's within capital punishment, and if you don't have capital punishment, then you get no punishment at all. Okay. ואפילו מאן דאמר לוקין, לכתוב לחמנה לא תעשה כל מלאכה, ובהמתך אתה למה לי, וניהו דמחייב, בהמתו למחייב. And even according to the one, another opinion that says that you would get flogged for a case where you normally get capital punishment, but in some case where capital punishment doesn't apply, then you should still get lashes in other cases. But even that opinion would not apply that to this case, because Pasuk says, do not do melacha, you and your animal. It could have just said, don't do melacha with your animal. But it adds the word you to say, you would be chayav for what you do, but you are not chayav for what your animal does. Not chayav at all. So that's the third opinion. So basically we have, to sum up, three different options. If someone makes his animal carry something for him on Shabbat, first opinion is that it would be the same as everything else, hatat and sekilah. The second opinion is that if he does it by mistake, it would be no punishment, but on purpose, then it would be sekilah. And the third opinion is no punishment at all, not sekilah, not serefa, not hatat, and not even lashes. All right, so now the next part of the Mishnah says that Friday afternoon, late, I forgot, and now I put something on the donkey and he's carrying it for me. I can't carry it all the way home, but rather once I get to the outer courtyard, a place where it'll be safe. That's the whole point of this law, is that nobody wants to throw away their purse and then they'll never find it again. So we allow this loophole. But you can't use the loophole once you're within the city limits near your home and it's a safe place. And so therefore, once it's in a safe place, then you have to take it off of the donkey. Okay, so Amar Rav Huna, הייתה בהמתו תאונה כלי זכוכית, והביא כרים וכסתות ומניח תחתיה. The Mishnah said that you can take off things by hand if they're not mukseh. If they are mukseh and you can't touch them, you can't move them, but you can just loosen the straps and let them fall on their own. So let's apply this now to glass. So if you had glass on your animal, and you let them fall, then they're going to break. So that's no good. So instead, you can go and bring cushions and blankets and put them down on the floor. And then, matira chavalim, asakin noflim. Then you undo it, and then those bags will fall onto the cushions, and the glass won't break. So he's telling you some good advice. Now, why do we need this advice at all? The Mishnah says that if it's not mukseh, you're allowed to take it by hand and move it. So these glass items, what are they? Are they cups? Are they plates? So they're also usable items, so take them and put them down. No, he was talking about a case, you're right. If it was cups and plates, you could use them. But he was talking about the items used by bloodletters. The different beakers and things that they used, which you can't do bloodletting on Shabbat. So these have no purpose. And so that's what he was talking about, the mukseh. So therefore, you should let them fall on pillows and not touch them directly. Wait a second, that's also not good, because we saw a few times this principle that I can't take something that is usable and do something with it, and then that will make it not usable, that will make it mukseh. In this case, if I take the pillows and cushions on the floor and I let the bags fall on them, now there's mukseh items on the cushions, and now the cushions can't be moved. So I removed something from its being available for use, which is also a problem. No, we solved that problem. These are small bundles of flasks. And so since they're small bundles, they'll fall on the pillow, but I could just shake them off easily and take the pillow if I want to, right? They're not completely covering the pillow, and they're not hard to get out. And so all of that is good, and that's a way to handle even glass things that are mukseh. Okay, metibe. We have a problem with this from a baraita. Hayta be'emtot te'ona tevel va'ashashiyot. Matir tahabelim v'asakim noflim. V'af al pi she'mishtaberin. Here's another similar case. If the animal had tevel is produce that I didn't take the tiruman, I didn't take the maaser. So I'm not allowed to eat it. Nobody's allowed to eat it. Has no use. It's mukseh. So if I have an animal full of tevel produce, I can't move it by hand. I can let it fall. And so too, ashashiyot, which is chunks of glass, unformed glass, that I'm taking, as raw material, and then I'll take it to the shop and melt it down and make glass utensils out of it. If I have these blocks of glass on the donkey, I can't touch them because they're not utensils. So I have to undo them and let them fall on their own. Even if they break, even if they're going to break, too bad. So look, over here you said that these unusable mukseh items, I have to let them break. It sounds like I can't put cushions on them or anything. And on the previous example, you said, bring cushions and put them under the cushions. So what's the difference? Hatam bechulsa. Oh, there is talking about chunks of glass that are going to be broken anyway. So it doesn't matter if they break, right? Unlike the beakers, where they'll be ruined if they break, these chunks of glass can be melted down in any case. So there's no point in putting pillows down to save them. It's like table. It's unfinished. And so just like table has no use, these chunks have no use. Okay. So why is this baraita add, even though they're going to break? I might have thought that it's still a small loss, because when they fall down, the corners chip off and I lose a little bit of the glass. But it's a very little bit. So I might have thought that even for that little bit, I'm allowed to go and put pillows on them and all that. But the baraita teaches that for just a small loss, we don't allow the person to do that. If it's a big loss, he's going to lose the entire those beakers. Then he can use that workaround and put pillows. But Tanya Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai Omer Hayta be'emtot te'ona shalif shel tebuah. The animal had a burden of grain on it, and I want to get it off. Well, it's mukseh, so I can't take it off, but I can use my head, right? This is called using your noggin. You're allowed to push it off with your head. Since that's an unusual way of moving things, so I'm allowed to move mukseh in that unusual way. And then it'll just get unseated and it will fall on its own. Good. Hamoro shel Rabban Gamaliel hayta teona devash velo rasa leforka ad Mosei Shabbat. Mosei Shabbat meta. Okay, now we have so Rabban Gamaliel, he had a chamor that had honey on it. And he didn't want to take the honey off of the donkey, because he knows, it'll fall down, it'll break. He wanted to leave it on the donkey, and he said, I'll take it off after Shabbat. He thought the donkey would be okay. But turns out it was very heavy, and the animal could not handle it. And by the time the Shabbat ended, the donkey died. Okay, poor donkey. Now we're going to analyze the story. Like, why didn't he take off the honey during the day? Says Mishnah, you're allowed to move things that are movable. If it's not mukseh, you can move it. So here, this is honey. Honey is edible. Honey is okay. So why don't you just take it physically and move it? The answer is keshe hidbish. The honey's spoiled, so it's not edible. That's why it was mukseh. So we couldn't move it directly. Hidbish the hazeh. Well, if it ruined, then that's not worth anything. So let it fall. Who cares? Who needs it? It's still good to rub for rubbing on wounds of a camel. Right, honey is a good antiseptic, and so although it's not edible, it's still usable. But usable for medicinal purposes, not something that would be usable on Shabbat. Okay, so he still wants to save it. Now, so let him do it. Just untie the rope and let it fall on its own, which is what the Mishnah says to do with mukse items. No, then the jugs would crack and all the honey would fall out and he'd lose it. So he doesn't want to do that. So why not bring pillows and cushions and blankets and put it under and it'll fall on them and then it won't break. That's not good either. They'll get all dirty and then the cushion will become mukse. And we said, as we said before, one's not allowed to do that, right? Oh, in the case before, it was permitted because they were small beakers, and we could just take the pillow from under it. But here, the honey is going to get all over it, and there's no way to save the pillows, so it's not permitted. Hold on, there's another problem here. How could you leave the honey on the animal? The animal is going to suffer, right? And so therefore, you should take it off, even if you have to violate the Rabbanan of Shabbat, mukse or whatever. So you got to do that in order to relieve the animal suffering. Must have thought that prohibition against making animals suffer is only the Rabbanan, and so therefore it would not trump this taking off. We did see there was another opinion that says Shabbat is deoraita. So according to that opinion, that's deoraita. Then you would be able to violate the Rabbanan in order to help out the animal. Okay, right. So that's a little story that happened, and so we go through all the different possibilities of exactly what was the case and what was he thinking, and why did he do his action. Good. All right. Now we have a beautiful little story. Abaye hashkeche le Rabba dekam meshafshef le libre agaba de hada hamra. Abaye saw that his teacher Rabba was taking his son, his little kid, and was giving him rides on the back of a donkey. Right. It's really cute because we don't think of these great sages as being fun dads and giving their kids slide rides on the slide. Okay, so now we're going to take all the fun out of it and analyze the halachic aspects of it. So the student is there, and Abaye, instead of just enjoying the kid giggling, he says, "Hold on, you're not allowed to do that. You are using an animal, right? You can't put a burden on an animal. And now you're taking this little kid and you're sliding it down the side of the animal, and so you're using the animal. This is not allowed on Shabbat." It's only the side of the animal. And the rabbis did not make a gezerah on this regarding the sides of the animal. You only can't put things on top of the animal that's holding its weight, but just pushing it on its side, that's all right. Okay, how do we know this? Titnan is Mishnah matir chabalim v'sakin noflin ma'ala becheber guvlaki davule hustadin la gazru behu rabbanan. Apparently, there's two ways to attach bags to a donkey. This is the one way it's tied on in such a way that in order to untie the rope, you'd have to push on the animal from one side in order to get some slack and be able to untie the rope and take it off. And the other way is where each one is tied independently, and so you could just cut one and take it off, and it's not, and you don't have to push on it. Okay, so first we, for the first proof, we assume that is the first way. So it says you can untie the bags and they'll fall. And in order to untie the bags in this way, you have to actually put pressure on the side of it, and you see it's allowed. So that's my proof. Rabbah says that I'm allowed to give my kids rides on the side of an animal. But Abaye answers, the student says, "Lo bechabed I agalavki, the lavu sedadin." No. The case is talking about where they're tied independently, and I don't have to push on one side. But if I did have to push on a side, then it would be prohibited. Or they were tied to the sides of an animal with a rope, and also you'd have to lean on it in that way. Okay, and it wouldn't have to lean on it. All right, so well, it could be either way. So there's no proof from that. Or disproof. Itibe, Abaye has a rejection, and now we're going to compare the this animal and the size of the animal to a tree that's used for a sukkah, right? So a sukkah, you're putting schach, and the schach is resting on something. Now on Shabbat and Yom Tov, there's a general law that you're not allowed to climb a tree. You're not allowed to climb a tree. First, it's not restful, it's not shavut. Bavli adds that, and you're might come to pluck a fruit or something while you're up in the tree, and so you're not allowed to make use and put your weight and climb on a tree. So now we're talking about using the tree to support as a wall of the sukkah, and so we're going to compare what part of the tree are we using? Are we using the sides of the tree or the top of the tree? If we're using the sides of the tree and you tell me it's not allowed, then so too the sides of an animal won't be allowed. If I'm only using the top of the tree to rest the schach on, and that's what's not allowed, but the side of the tree is allowed, then the side of a donkey would be allowed. So that is what we're going to be doing for the next few lines till the end of this stuff, is comparing a donkey carrying on its side to a sukkah tree carrying bearing weight of a sukkah. Itibe. Mishnah says Masechet Sukkah. Shetayim bidei adam v'achat be'ilan keshera. If I have two artificial walls that I just made them out of whatever, and one of the walls is a tree, that's okay. That sukkah is permitted. However, en olim la b'yom tov, I'm not allowed to go on top of the sukkah, because if I go on top of the sukkah and I'm sitting on the schach, then the schach is resting on the tree, and I am therefore indirectly resting on that tree. I mean, I need that tree to rest on it. You need, three supports to hold something up. So my love, the hakabe be'ilan, lehu sudadin usadin asurin. Now, what is this case? A tree is relatively small, right? And so it must be a case where I made holes in the tree and I put beams and I rested the schach on a beam that's attached to the side of the tree, and still says it's not allowed. Therefore, I can prove that I'm not allowed to put weight on the side of a tree, and so too, Abaye is telling his teacher, I wouldn't be able to put weight on the side of an animal. That would be called also that the animal is carrying you. Okay, that's the question. Rabba says no. La techafye leilan ve'anach sikuch ilave. No, it's talking about I bent the tree over, and so that's making the wall, all those branches, and I'm resting the schach on top of the tree, right? So it's actually resting on top of the tree, not on the side. The mishamesh ba'ilan, I'm using the top of the tree. And that's why it wouldn't be allowed. I can't go up on it because then I am resting on the tree itself, not just in something that's coming out of the side of the tree. Okay, let's see if that works. If that's your interpretation, the next part of Mishnah is another case. If I have three walls that are made out of artificial substances, and only the fourth wall is a tree, then it's allowed. And I can even go up there, because now that I'm going up there, the schach is resting sufficiently on the three man-made walls, right? I don't even need the fourth wall. That's just extra support, but not needed. So when I'm going up there, my weight is being supported by the three artificial walls and not by the tree. So therefore, I am allowed. But hold on, if it's talking about a tree that I bent over and the roof is on top of it, why should it be allowed? Because after all, some of the weight is going on the tree. I'm not allowed to put weight on the tree. I'm not allowed to climb a tree. So if that's the case, then the last case in the Mishnah doesn't make sense. So Abaye wants to say, no, it's the size of the tree. Elamai Sadadin Asurin. So Rabbi says, what do you want to go back and say that's the size of the tree and still it's allowed and it's not allowed? Sof sof amai olin na biyom tov. It said size of the tree, right? And it says that if you have 3 walls and then the other side, you're allowed to go. You're allowed to go up on Yom Tov. So how does your opinion help? If you think that the sides of the tree are not allowed, and so in this case, if I have 3 artificial walls, and the 4th one, according to you, Abaye, is are poles attached to the sides of the tree. So you should still say it's not allowed because you think the sides are not allowed. So how would it be any different for you? Rather, it's talking about the branches that are spread out, and that's the wall itself. And the wall, the tree, is merely making a wall. It's not supporting the schach at all, right? So really, because all I need schach is to be supported by the 3 walls, and the last tree is not even touching, there's no weight of the schach that's going on that 4th wall where the tree is. And that's why it's allowed. And my opinion makes sense. Right, the Mishnah ends with the general rule: if you can take away the tree and the schach will remain intact, then I'm allowed to go and stand on the schach, because obviously its weight is not being borne by the tree. And so therefore must be a case that easily can be a case that I was talking about, says Rabbah, where it's not talking about the tree. There's poles in the sides of the tree, but rather the first case of the Mishnah is talking about two artificial walls and one tree, and it's going and it's resting on top of the tree itself, the schach, and that's the case that the Mishnah is talking about. And so only because going on top of the tree that's not allowed. But if it was in fact only being supported by the sides of the tree, then it would be allowed. By analogy, using the side of an animal is permitted, and that's why he can go back to letting his son slide down the side of the animal, and that is a good place to conclude. Baruch Adonai Olam. Amen.